Alrighty. Well, today we are continuing with our wellness theme, mind-body connection. Last week we went over the science of mind-body wellness and how they're intertwined and really interact in more ways than we know. And today we're covering integrating mindfulness into physical activity, which I think is so important. Next week, we're going to be going into mental techniques for improving physical performance. And week 4, we're going to be going into balancing mental health and physical health goals. So again, today we're going into integrating mindfulness into physical activity. Like I mentioned before we started this recording, it's going to be a quick lesson, only about 20 minutes. And I highly encourage you guys, if you have any questions, let me know to slow down or to speed up if I'm going too slow, or if you want me to dive into any thing a little more in depth, I'm happy to do so. So I broke today's lesson into 2 parts. Part 1 is incorporating mindfulness into workouts and daily routines. And part 2 is just practical exercises of being mindful. So we have breathing techniques and mindful movement, which I think is oh so important. Like I said, it's going to be a quick lesson, so bear with me. My goal with all of these lessons is to provide you guys with concise information, with tools and protocols that you can take and incorporate into your daily life to better your trading and your life as a whole. So without further ado, folks, let's jump into it. Integrating mindfulness into physical activity. Incorporating mindfulness into workouts and daily routines. So how do we do that? So mindfulness and physical activity. So mindfulness involves focusing on the present moment without judgment. When applied to physical activity, it means paying attention to your body, breath, and movement during exercise. Now, I can't speak for everybody, but I know it is quite common in Western culture to really not be in sync with your body, whether that's because you're overweight, you don't move the same way that you used to be able to, not because of age, but because of neglect of physical health. And there's quite a few other things that go along with that. And one of them being diet, one of them being not getting enough sunlight. It could be sleep. And a part of that is mindfulness over your physical body. You're feeling yourself. And some people refer to that feeling as grounding, being established, that mind to body connection. So mindful physical activity helps improve body awareness, reduces stress, and enhances the overall quality of workouts by preventing distractions. So it's pretty straightforward. It is taking the time to be present and focusing on what your body is doing and how it's feeling during that activity. And though it is simple, it is not easy if you are in the habit of just not really paying attention to your movements and kind of just moving about your day. And I often see that in the gym when people are not really focused on the movement. They're focused on the podcast in their ears or the music or whatever else is on their mind, and they're really not focused on the movement. Though it is good they're still getting exercise in, I don't want to dismiss that aspect of it, but it could be optimized. And the mindfulness is how we optimize that physical movement. And essentially it goes back to the, I don't want to say primitive because that sounds almost lesser when we talk about being cognitive, but it is a primitive activity when we truly focus on how our body feels. And having that mind to muscle connection is super important, and understanding how our body reacts to certain things like stresses, like a physical load, like certain foods. All this stuff really does affect our anatomy and our biology as a whole, and it's important to be aware of this stuff. So essentially what I'm saying is when we're trying to incorporate mindfulness into physical activity, it is a practice that has to be at a conscious level. You can't just go work out and say, I'm going to be mindful, because naturally, unless you're really mindful as a person, your mind is going to wander. You're going to start to think about other things, even if you're doing a physically strenuous activity like yoga. And then all of a sudden you get a little pinch point, and all of a sudden all your focus is on that pain, and then you start thinking about other things. You're really not focusing on your body as a whole. And I'll get into why it's important to focus on your body as a whole. So a practical tip for us when incorporating mindfulness into physical activity: during workouts, focus on how your body feels with each movement, noticing your breathing, muscle tension, and posture to stay fully engaged in the activity. And I put all those for a specific reason. I said, notice your breathing, your muscle tension, and your posture to stay fully engaged in the activity. And for me, this is important because I practice mindfulness on a daily basis. It's not full, it is not complete in my life. I oftentimes, when I'm walking around the kitchen or whatever it might be, I'm really not paying attention to my posture so much or how the ground feels under my feet. Oftentimes, there are activities and responsibilities that take precedent over that. But when I do have the opportunity, like when I'm in the gym or doing stretching or yoga, you do have the opportunity to slow your mind for a second and focus on these things like breathing, your muscle tension, and your posture. And if you're able to really focus on how to, like if you go into a lunge position, how does your glute feel relative to your quad? And how do your joints surrounding that feel? How does your hip, your ankle, and your knee feel when you're in that? And how much pressure do you have on your foot? And when you start to think, and I'm not saying these are the things that you need to focus on, but when you start to focus on the body, all the noise in your mind starts to go away, and it gives you the opportunity to really be in sync with your body. And it's a pretty, I don't want to say magical, but it's a really great feeling when you're able to quiet the noise that you have daily running through your mind and really focus on your body. And when you do so, when you focus on that muscle tension in your joints, when you focus on your breathing, everything fades away and you're able to listen to your body. And we'll get into why listening to your body is so important. But this is just a reminder, a lesson to all of us who may have not had one of those moments in a long time where you truly are listening to your body. Unless your body's screaming at you, like you ate something bad and you feel like throwing up, or you have really sharp pain in your lower back. Yeah, that really perks up the ears to listen to your body. But if we're not doing it on a daily basis, we're not going to be able to optimally move. We're not going to be able to optimally listen to our body and focus on the things that matter. And I just really think that it is important for long-term health and longevity to really listen to your body and do what it's telling you. So moving into mindful routines in daily life. And again, like I mentioned, I do this stuff every day. I do stretching, I do yoga. You could call it one and the same. But I really try to focus on that mind to body connection. So you can bring mindfulness into everyday activities like walking, stretching, or even household chores, helping maintain a calm, focused state throughout the day. And essentially what it is just a shift of focus, because your focus has to go somewhere. And if you're focusing on the thoughts in your head, your body is really good at diving into one subject. That's why, overthinkers or people with anxiety tend to go down the rabbit hole, and that anxiety worsens. And when you're not doing something physical, especially because your body is still, there's not a whole lot going on physically. So your mental state is able to ramp up. So if you're doing something, all you have to do is shift that focus to how your body feels. Even if you're sweeping, feel your posture. Like, how are you standing? Is your core engaged when you're standing, as it should be? Are your glutes engaged, and are your hips in a neutral spot? I highly recommend also walking barefoot, but that's another discussion entirely. But how do your feet feel? Maybe they're in your socks and shoes, preferably you're barefoot, and maybe it's just on the kitchen floor or the hardwood and you're sweeping. And how does that feel? And if you're able to shift that focus from whatever is going on in your head to your body, it's a state of tranquility. You're able to relax. You're able to just breathe and be fully present in the activity you're focused on. You're not worried about things of the past or the future. It's just what's happening right now. And I think that is so important for not only emotional control, but also just to reduce stress in your overall life, to shift your nervous system from that high stress area to that rest and digest area, the parasympathetic, or the sympathetic rather, to the parasympathetic, and remove the cortisol from your bloodstream just from breathing. And it's scientifically proven, and it's a simple act. It's not easy, I'm not saying that, but it's important, and I highly encourage us all to practice that mindfulness movement at some point during the day. It's changed my life for sure, I can tell you that. Moving right on to part 2, I did mention it's going to be a quick lesson. We have practical exercises. So when I talk about breathing techniques and mindfulness movement, these are some practical things you can actually incorporate. So breathing techniques and mindful movement. So jumping into breathing techniques, we have something called the box breath. This is really good. I've talked in depth about the physiological side and why that is the best way to reduce stress in real time and to lower stress overall throughout the rest of your day after you practice the physiological side. But there's plenty of breath work that does help with your stress levels and help you regain focus on the present. So use deep, controlled breathing to stay centered during physical activity. Techniques like box breathing, where you inhale for 4 seconds, you hold for 4 seconds, you exhale for 4 seconds, and you hold for 4 seconds, and then you repeat, can help regulate your emotions and keep you grounded. Again, this is physiological things that are happening in your body when you practice this breath. Not only does it re-regulate your, your oxygen and carbon dioxide levels in your bloodstream and in your lungs by fully inflating your lungs, fully deflating, but it also helps reduce stress in real time by literally lowering the cortisol and epinephrine, norepinephrine levels in your bloodstream. It's pretty incredible stuff, and all we have to do is breathe and be mindful. I know it sounds non-traditional and a little new agey, but it's proven hard science. So incorporate 1 to 2 minutes of deep breathing before and after your workout to reduce stress and bring your focus into the present moment. So this is something I used to do, and I've unfortunately fallen out of the habit because of change of scenery, and I neglected and forgot to reincorporate it into my daily activities. But what I used to do after the gym, most of the time my gym was pretty crowded in Southern California, so I would wait until I was out of the gym. I would finish up my workout, go grab my bag, and go and sit in the car. And before turning on the car, before turning on the radio, before doing anything, I would sit there and be mindful and just breathe. And I could, in real time, I could feel my heart rate slow, and I could feel the stress start to leave my bloodstream. And I'm not saying I felt, the chemical reactions in my bloodstream. No, I felt a sense of peace coming over me when I did the breathing techniques. And for me, it wasn't box breathing. I used the physiological side, but whatever you find that works for you the best, I highly encourage you guys to do so. It's just important, and it's so neglected, especially in Western civilization. We just get caught up in the hustle and bustle of day-to-day life, and we really lose focus of the present. And I think that's such a tragedy. And it's something we ought to strive to get back into the focus of, because I know that used to be something that especially our ancestors and further used to prioritize, and we don't prioritize it anymore. So last little section here, mindful movement. So again, this is a practical tip for us. Practice mindful movement by paying close attention to your body sensations during activities like yoga, walking, or resistance training, focusing on alignment, the flow of movement, and breath coordination. So when we talk about mindful movement, this goes hand in hand with exercise. If you're not exercising, I highly recommend you go back to some of my other wellness playlist or other wellness videos that I have on YouTube. I can link that for you guys, but exercise is so important for a long, healthy, and happy life. And it is directly connected to your emotional health, the regulation of your hormones, and also your mental health. So if you're not moving your body intentionally throughout the day, whether it's for cardio training, whether it's resistance training, whether it's just walking outside, if you're not doing that, you're really setting yourself up for failure. And so mindful movement goes hand in hand with this stuff. So if you want to get into working out, just reach out to me in my DMs. I'd be happy to help you set up a program that is aligned with, if you've never set foot inside of a gym or done resistance training in your life, we can start there. If you've been doing it for a while and you just want some tips, we can exchange some information. So moving on, when we talk about doing activities like yoga, walking, or resistance training, and if you just, again, it's a shift of focus. If you shift your focus from whatever's going on in your head about your job or your life or your family, whatever it is, and you shift to how your body feels. Let's take just walking, for example. If you shift that focus to the sensations of your body, how each foot is hitting the ground and rolling and moving to the next foot, and how tight do your hips feel? Do they feel really loose? You don't even feel your hips when you're walking. Like, oh, okay, I'm starting to feel my glutes engage every time I take a step. My quads start to extend as I, push off to the next step. I can feel my foot roll. Oh, I feel a little bit of plantar fasciitis. I had to look into that. When you start to shift that focus, it is so powerful. And it's one of those things that will help not only your body, because you can start to listen to it more. You can say, hey, this is something I ought to, I'm a little tight here. I got to go stretch it. Or there's, some pinching pain or a little, nerve pain. That's something I should really pay attention to moving forward. So not only is it good on that practical level of, just maintaining a healthy body, but it's so important for, again, what we talked about is that mind-to-body connection, how your mind really is affected by your thoughts. And we went into that in depth in that was our psychology lesson. We were talking about cognitive behavioral therapy, but nonetheless, it is important for us to incorporate something in a daily activity to focus on the present. And this is a really good way to do so. And it's good for your body. It's good for your physical health. It's good for your mental health, your emotional health. The whole shebang is just focusing on your movement while you do movement. It's pretty straightforward. And I don't mean to beat the dead horse here, folks, but this stuff's important, and it's so neglected, and I see it neglected all the time, even for people who do work out. So here's just a reminder: pay attention to your body. It's pretty cool. You'll start to see some pretty cool things happen when you do so. So practical tip just for mindful movement and breathing. Last little section here is during strength training. For those of you who are incorporating resistance training into your weekly activities, during strength training, match your breath with your movements. For example, it is highly recommended when you're doing any sort of heavy load, like a compound movement, say benching or squatting. When you lift, let's take squatting, for example. When it's on the bar, and you take it off the bar and walk backwards, that is when you take your deep inhale to fully inflate your lungs, your deep diaphragm inhale, and then you engage your entire core. And it almost turns into like a closed soda can, to where if you weren't breathing, that soda can's open and empty. And as soon as you go down with that weight on your shoulders, your core can start to fail. It starts to crumble like an open soda can. But when you take that deep breath and you are able to expand your diaphragm as deep as you can, and then you brace, you flex your core hard. So not only are your erectors from your spine engaging, but your obliques and your abs, the whole shebang. When you're able to take that deep breath and engage your core and go down, you're being mindful. That focus on whatever else is happening in your life really starts to focus on the weight on your shoulders and how your core is feeling. And then when you go down, you are still holding that breath. You can almost think of it as if you're when you take that bar off the rack and you're underwater, almost underwater, where your head is just above water, you take that deep breath and you're holding that breath through the movement. You go underwater and then you push up. And as soon as you're close to the top of that rep, that's when you can start to exhale. And this isn't me just saying things because I like to say things. This is from good scientific data, and I can point to a few people if you guys would like that resource. But it's so important to brace your core during heavy movements and stuff. But again, this is just a practical example for those of us who are doing resistance training for heavy compound movements. Being mindful can be as simple as that. Like, I'm going to focus on my core as I do this. And when you do that, I can promise you your focus will shift from, your rude coworker to your core. And it's a really powerful thing when you start to do that. So my closing statement for you guys today is, by integrating mindfulness into physical activity through breathing techniques and mindful movement, you can enhance the effectiveness of your workouts and create a more balanced, present-focused daily routine. And that last part is so important, folks. Present-focused daily routine. I don't feel like a lot of us, unfortunately, are really focused on the present. And I think it's something we ought to get back to. So I appreciate you guys so much for joining up. I know it was a small class today, but we're right on the dot, 20 minutes. So I just want to leave you guys with a few encouragements. Practice something daily about being mindful. Do some mindful movement techniques, and go drink water, go work out, go eat the healthy option. If you're in the grocery store, reach for the organic food. I'm telling you, it will save your life on a real level, and go tell your loved ones that you love them. So I appreciate you guys tons, and we do apologize about the shift of schedule today, but again, it is so important to focus on us, focus on the people. When people are going through something, we ought to rally behind them and support them by any means necessary. So we do really appreciate you guys. DC, I missed your thoughts. That's true. I walk barefoot around the house. I never knew that. I'm gonna try next time I have a bad red day. Yeah, the barefoot thing is, I could scream it from the rooftop. So I broke my feet. I got terrible bilateral plantar fasciitis. I had tons of broken stuff going on in my feet and ankles and knees. A couple torn ligaments in both ankles, and so the doctors are saying, hey, surgery, and painkillers. And I was like, that can't be the only option. So I dove in for, now I'm on year 4, I believe, of a muscle strengthening in your feet and how your feet are supposed to optimally operate. And it changed how I think about things. I call shoes foot prisons now. But that's besides the point. It's important for us not only to walk how our biology is intended, to splay our toes and to really focus on our movement. But if you're at the gym and your gym allows you to, and you have healthy feet, I highly recommend doing compound movements like squatting or Bulgarian split squats or Romanian deadlifts, whatever it is, with your shoes off. If your gym allows it, it is the base that we should be pushing from. And I also highly encourage you guys to look into, they're called barefoot style shoes, and they're not the weird looking ones with like displayed toes and stuff. I'm talking about just shoes that have minimal support at the bottom. And this is specific for gym and training techniques. I'm not talking about if you're a healthcare worker on your feet all day. I do believe you should have some cushion under your soles, but when we're talking about training, we should be pushing from our feet. And if you have big fluffy clouds under your feet essentially, and you go to push a heavy weight and your toes are trapped by that small toe box, you're going to run into issues, and it's going to lead to improper knee positioning, or improper foot, then ankle position, then your knees and your hips, and then your back. And I promise you guys, there's really good data to support what I'm saying. It is not the place that you're supposed to be pushing from. So try pushing either barefoot, or grab yourself a pair of like Vivo barefoot shoes or Flux footwear. Those guys are really good. Unfortunately, they don't carry anything in my size. It is a tragedy, but I highly recommend that stuff. It's really good. Working out helped me with plantar fasciitis. Got rid of it when I had it. It was it hurt so bad when I'm getting up. Worst pain ever. Yeah, I never even knew what plantar fasciitis was, and it was during training when I first got it. I'm a size 17 boot. They put me in a size 14 when I got to the Army, and they didn't change me out of them until I pulled off my shoes, and both of my big toenail, I know this is gross, both of my big toenails were gone, bleeding like crazy on a ruck. And I'm like the blood was staining my boot, and so it became a dress code violation essentially. And I was like, yeah, I need some bigger shoes, folks. Like, this ain't going to work out. It was just such a mess from the beginning. But that plantar fasciitis, dude, I never knew what it was and I couldn't see it, and it just felt like my feet were ripping in half. And I'm like, what is happening to my feet right now? But yeah, stuff like just strengthening your feet and pushing from a solid base with that heavy weight will help with that stuff. It's so cool. It's, we're just doing the wrong things in America, it seems like, for quite a few things. But yeah, well, I do appreciate you guys a ton. Don't mean to dump my dirty laundry on you guys, but I always like interacting with you guys. So again, I appreciate you guys a ton. Thank you guys for being patient and understanding of this schedule change. I do not know what tomorrow's schedule looks like yet. We're giving Jojo as much time as he needs. So if I'm taking over again tomorrow, we just really do appreciate your understanding and patience. I promise you, we are going to, as soon as possible, get back to our regularly scheduled activities. So appreciate you guys, and I hope you have a fantastic day. Peace.